Welcome to Spooky Stories. I'm Milo, your guide through the chilling and the unknown. Here, we dive into terrifying tales that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Join our community of thrill seekers, and let's explore the darkness together. Are you ready to be scared? 1. The park was bathed in the golden hues of late afternoon sunlight. Birds chirped, children laughed, and joggers moved rhythmically along the paths. I often came here to clear my head after a long day, to feel the grass beneath my feet, and to savor the simple joys of life. Little did I know, today would be anything but simple. I was walking leisurely, my thoughts drifting aimlessly, when it happened. A man, sprinting with an intensity I'd never seen, collided with me, sending us both sprawling. The impact was so violent that it left me breathless, my heart pounding in my chest. Instinctively, I braced myself for an attack, fearing the worst, an assault, a mugging. But what happened next threw me into a whirlwind of confusion and fear. The man, wild-eyed and drenched in sweat, scrambled to his feet. His hands shook as he roughly pushed me aside. "Get out of here!" he shouted, his voice tinged with sheer terror. Before I could react, he took off again, running even faster than before, leaving me in a state of shock. I stood there, trembling, trying to process what had just occurred. My mind raced with questions and possibilities. Was he a criminal? Was I in danger? I scanned the park, but there was no sign of him. Only the usual park-goers, oblivious to the chaotic encounter that had just taken place. With my heart still racing, I decided to go to the police. I recounted the bizarre incident, every detail etched into my memory. The officers took my statement seriously, but there wasn't much they could do without more information. They assured me they would keep an eye out and asked me to stay vigilant. The following days were a blur of anxiety and restless nights. Every shadow seemed menacing, every stranger a potential threat. My sense of safety had been shattered. Then, one evening, my phone rang. It was the police. "We need you to come down to the station," the officer said. "We think we've found the man you described." My stomach churned with a mix of fear and curiosity. What had they discovered? Who was this man? At the station, I was led into a room with a one-way mirror. On the other side, several men were lined up. I scanned their faces, my heart thudding with anticipation. But none of them looked familiar. The officers asked if I recognized anyone, and I shook my head, disappointed and confused. Just as I was about to leave, I saw him, not in the lineup, but across the room, speaking with a detective. My breath caught in my throat. "That's him," I blurted out, pointing. "That's the man who ran into me." Chaos erupted. Officers rushed to detain him, and the room buzzed with urgent whispers and hurried movements. My mind swirled with questions. Why was he here? What was going on? As the situation unfolded, the truth emerged. A truth more shocking and twisted than I could have imagined. The man I had encountered wasn't a criminal. He was a victim. He had been fleeing for his life, pursued by someone intent on killing him. The detective explained that the man, named Alex, had stumbled upon something he shouldn't have, something dangerous. The person chasing him, now in custody, had intended to silence him permanently. My presence in the park that day had inadvertently saved Alex's life. The attacker had fled, fearing he had been seen by too many witnesses. I was stunned. The realization that I had been so close to such a deadly situation left me shaken. But there was more to the story, something that didn't sit right with me. Why had Alex been targeted? What had he discovered that was worth killing for? Over the next few days, I couldn't stop thinking about Alex. His fear, his desperation. It haunted me. I needed to know more. Driven by a mix of curiosity and a strange sense of responsibility, I decided to reach out to him. Alex agreed to meet, and we chose a quiet cafe away from prying eyes. He looked different now, calmer but still wary. As we sat down, I could see the weight of his ordeal etched into his features. "Thank you," he said quietly, his voice filled with gratitude. "If you hadn't been there, I don't know what would have happened." I nodded, feeling a strange kinship with this man whose life had intersected with mine in such a dramatic way. "What happened, Alex? Why were they after you?" He sighed, glancing around to ensure we weren't being overheard. "I work in cybersecurity. A few weeks ago, I came across some files, sensitive information about a powerful organization. They've been involved in illegal activities, things that could bring them down if exposed." My eyes widened. This was bigger than I had imagined. "And they found out you knew?" "Yes," he said, his voice tense. "They sent someone to eliminate me. That day in the park, I was trying to get to a safe place, somewhere I could hand over the evidence without being caught." A chill ran down my spine. This was like something out of a thriller novel, but it was real, and I was entangled in it. "Do you still have the evidence?" He nodded. "It's hidden, but I need to get it to the authorities. It's the only way to stop them." As he spoke, I realized the gravity of the situation. This wasn't just about Alex's safety. It was about exposing a network of corruption and crime. My mind raced with the implications. Could I help him? Should I help him? Before I could respond, Alex leaned forward, his eyes earnest. "I need your help. You're the only person who knows what I've been through, who understands the danger. Will you help me?" His request hung in the air, heavy with significance. I felt a rush of conflicting emotions: fear, excitement, a sense of duty. This was my chance to make a difference, to stand up against something truly sinister. But it was also a path fraught with danger. "I'll help you," I said finally, my voice steady. "But we need to be careful. We need a plan." Over the next few days, Alex and I worked together, devising a strategy to safely retrieve and deliver the evidence. It was a race against time, every moment filled with tension and uncertainty. We knew we were being watched, that any misstep could be fatal. The final phase of our plan took us to an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the city. Alex had hidden the files there, in a place he hoped would remain undetected. As we approached the building, my heart pounded with a mix of fear and determination. Inside, the air was thick with dust and the scent of decay. Every creak of the floorboards set my nerves on edge. We moved quickly, Alex leading the way to a concealed compartment in the floor. He retrieved the files, his hands shaking slightly. "We need to get these to the authorities now," he said, his voice urgent. Just as we turned to leave, the door burst open. Armed men flooded in, their faces masked, their intentions clear. My heart sank. We were trapped, but Alex was prepared. He pulled out a small device, pressing a button that sent a distress signal to the police. We just had to hold on until they arrived. A tense standoff ensued. The men demanded the files, their threats chilling. But we stood our ground, knowing that giving in would mean certain death. Minutes felt like hours. The sound of sirens in the distance was a beacon of hope. The police arrived, storming the warehouse, overwhelming the attackers. It was over. In the aftermath, Alex handed the evidence to the authorities. The weight of his burden finally lifted. The criminals were arrested, their network dismantled. Justice had been served. As we left the police station, Alex turned to me, his expression one of profound gratitude. "You saved my life," he said simply. I shook my head. We saved each other. In that moment, I realized how true it was. Our lives had collided in a violent, chaotic instant, But together we had faced the darkness and emerged victorious. The park, once a place of simple joys, had become the backdrop for a story of survival, courage, and unexpected heroism. 2. The park was my sanctuary, a place where the chaos of daily life melted away. I cherished my evening walks there, savoring the tranquility and the soft rustle of leaves in the breeze. It was around 7 p.m., the golden hour when the sun began its descent, casting a warm, ethereal glow over everything. The park was relatively empty, a state I preferred as it allowed me to reflect and unwind. That evening was no different, or so I thought. As I rounded a corner on one of the less frequented paths, I noticed a man standing under a sprawling oak tree. He was dressed in a dark hoodie and jeans, an odd choice given the warmth of the evening. His posture was rigid, his eyes darting around as if he were searching for something or someone. Our eyes met briefly, and I quickly looked away, an uneasy feeling settling in my stomach. I kept walking, trying to maintain my calm. Minutes later, I sensed a presence behind me. A quick glance over my shoulder confirmed my growing fear. It was the same man. He was now walking briskly in my direction. My heart began to race, a cold sweat breaking out on my skin. I quickened my pace, hoping to put some distance between us. His footsteps grew louder, matching mine in urgency. Just as I was about to break into a run, a jogger emerged from a side path, startling both me and the man. The stranger halted abruptly, his expression momentarily frozen in shock. Without a word, he turned on his heel and hurried away. The jogger, blissfully unaware of the tension he had disrupted, continued on his route, earbuds firmly in place. I wasted no time in making my way out of the park, my heart pounding as I half walked, half ran to the nearest exit. That night, sleep eluded me. My mind replayed the encounter over and over, each detail etched into my memory. What had that man wanted? Why had he been following me? The questions gnawed at me, and I decided to report the incident to the park authorities the next day. The park officials listened attentively to my account. They assured me they would increase patrols and keep an eye out for any suspicious behavior. Their reassurance did little to quell my unease. The park, once my haven, now felt tainted by a shadow of fear. Despite the lingering anxiety, I continued my evening walks. The routine was too ingrained, too essential to my peace of mind to abandon. But I was more vigilant now, avoiding the less traveled paths and staying in well-lit, populated areas. The man in the hoodie haunted my thoughts, a specter of dread that I couldn't shake. Days turned into weeks, and gradually my fear began to fade. The park seemed safe again, the incident slipping into the realm of unsettling memory. That was until one fateful evening, when I found myself inexplicably drawn to the same path where it had all begun. The sun was setting, casting long shadows that danced in the fading light. I walked slowly, my senses on high alert. As I neared the oak tree, a chill ran down my spine. The tree stood silent, but the memory of the man was palpable, as if the air itself held a lingering trace of his presence. Suddenly, a rustling sound broke the stillness. I turned sharply, my heart leaping into my throat. There, partially hidden behind the tree, was the man. He stepped forward, his eyes locking onto mine with an intensity that made my blood run cold. "Why are you following me?" I demanded, my voice shaking with a mix of fear and anger. He didn't respond immediately. Instead, he looked around nervously, just as he had before. "I need your help," he finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. My mind raced. Help? This was not what I had expected. The man moved closer, and I instinctively stepped back, ready to flee. But something in his eyes, a desperate plea, held me in place. "They're after me," he said, glancing over his shoulder. Please, you have to listen. Against my better judgment, I nodded. Who's after you? He took a deep breath, as if steeling himself to reveal something monumental. I work for a private security firm, he began. We were hired to investigate a series of high-profile disappearances. What we uncovered was beyond anything I could have imagined. A powerful organization involved in human trafficking, drugs, weapons, everything. I found evidence, and now they're trying to silence me. His words sent a jolt of shock through me. This sounded like the plot of a thriller novel, not something that could be unfolding in my quiet, peaceful town. Why me? I asked, my voice steadier now, driven by curiosity. Because they know who I am, he replied. They know where I live, who I talk to. But you, they don't know you. You're my only chance. The weight of his plea settled heavily on my shoulders. I could walk away, leave him to his fate, but something inside me, a sense of justice or perhaps simple human compassion, wouldn't let me. Okay, I said, my decision made. What do you need me to do? Over the next hour, as the park grew darker and more deserted, he laid out his plan. He had hidden the evidence in a safe place, but he needed someone to retrieve it and deliver it to the authorities. The risks were high. If the organization discovered his plan, they would stop at nothing to destroy the evidence and anyone involved. As he spoke, the gravity of the situation sank in. This was real and it was dangerous, but I was in too deep to back out now. We agreed to meet the next evening in a more secure location to finalize the details. That night, my sleep was plagued by nightmares. Dark figures chasing me through the park, my feet sinking into the ground as I tried to run. But through it all, I felt a strange resolve. I had to see this through. The following evening, we met in an old, abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town. It was the perfect place for secrecy, far from prying eyes. The man, who introduced himself as Daniel, handed me a small, unmarked flash drive. This contains everything, he said, his voice tense. You need to take it to Detective Harris at the Central Precinct. He's the only one I trust. I nodded, my heart pounding. What about you? I'll be fine, he replied, though he didn't sound convinced. I just need to stay out of sight until this blows over. We parted ways and I made my way to the precinct, the flash drive hidden securely in my bag. Every shadow seemed to loom larger, every sound amplified by my heightened nerves. When I finally reached the precinct, I asked for Detective Harris, my voice steady despite the storm of emotions inside me. Detective Harris was a tall, imposing figure with a no-nonsense demeanor that both reassured and intimidated me. I handed him the flash drive and relayed Daniel's message. His expression grew graver with each word. You're brave for doing this, he said, pocketing the drive. We'll take it from here. And you, stay safe. Days passed with agonizing slowness. I heard nothing from Daniel, and my attempts to contact him were futile. The park, once my refuge, now felt like a stage set for unseen dangers. Every walk was filled with anxiety, every stranger a potential threat. Then, one evening, my phone rang. It was Detective Harris. We got them, he said, his voice filled with triumph. The evidence was enough to bring them down. Daniel is safe. Relief washed over me, mixed with an overwhelming sense of accomplishment. We had done it. The shadow that had loomed over my peaceful town was lifted, and justice had prevailed. In the weeks that followed, the story made headlines. The powerful organization, exposed and dismantled, was a topic of heated discussion. But amidst the praise and the shock, my involvement remained a secret, known only to a few. Daniel and I kept in touch, bound by the extraordinary events that had brought us together. The park returned to its tranquil state, and I resumed my evening walks. But now, each step was taken with a deeper awareness of the world around me. The encounter had changed me, infused my quiet routine with a sense of purpose and resilience. Life returned to a semblance of normalcy, but I carried the memory of that twilight encounter with me, a reminder of the hidden battles and silent heroes that exist beyond the surface of everyday life. 3. The air was crisp, a typical autumn afternoon, perfect for a run to clear my mind. The park, renowned for its scenic beauty, was usually bustling with life. Today, however, it was eerily silent. There were no children playing, no dogs barking, just the rhythmic sound of my feet hitting the ground. The quiet was unsettling, yet I welcomed the solitude, immersing myself in the serenity of the surroundings. As I jogged along the winding paths through dense trees and open fields, the silence became almost deafening. Halfway through my run, I saw a figure in the distance, standing perfectly still beside the path. My pace slowed, curiosity and caution intertwining as I approached. The figure was a woman, dressed in an antiquated gown that looked like something out of a different century. Her face was pale, and her expression was vacant, as if she were in a trance. The contrast between her and the vibrant autumn landscape was jarring, almost surreal. I slowed to a walk, trying to make sense of the scene before me. The woman didn't move, didn't acknowledge my presence. A chill ran down my spine. Feeling unnerved, I picked up my pace again, eager to put distance between us. After a few minutes, my curiosity got the better of me, and I glanced back over my shoulder. To my shock, she was gone. The path was empty, devoid of any trace of the woman. I stopped, scanning the area, looking for any sign of her. There was nothing, no movement, no rustling of leaves, just the unnerving silence. It was as if she had vanished into thin air. The rest of my run was a blur. I couldn't shake the image of the woman, nor the eerie feeling that lingered. When I got home, I immediately began searching online for any information about the park. To my surprise, I found numerous accounts of strange sightings and unexplained phenomena in the area. Some people believed the park was haunted, with reports of ghostly figures appearing and disappearing without a trace. One story in particular caught my attention. It was about a woman who had been seen in the park on several occasions, always in the same antiquated dress, always with the same vacant expression. According to the stories, she was the ghost of a woman who had lived in a nearby manor house over a century ago. She had died under mysterious circumstances, and her spirit was said to wander the park, searching for something or someone. The next few days were filled with an unsettling mix of fear and fascination. The logical part of my mind dismissed the idea of ghosts, but the experience had been so vivid, so real. Couldn't ignore it. Despite my apprehension, I continued my evening runs, unable to resist the pull of the park and its mysteries. Each run was a test of nerves. I found myself constantly looking over my shoulder, half expecting to see the woman again. The sense of being watched never left me, a constant companion in the quiet solitude of the park. One evening, about a week after my first encounter, I saw her again. She was standing in the same spot, wearing the same dress, her expression unchanged. This time, instead of running away, I approached her cautiously. My heart pounded in my chest as I drew closer. "Hello," I called out, my voice trembling. The woman didn't respond. She stood there, as still as a statue, her eyes fixed on something in the distance. I stepped closer, my fear battling with my curiosity. "Who are you?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Suddenly, she turned her head to look at me. Her eyes, hollow and filled with a deep sorrow, seemed to look right through me. I felt a cold shiver run down my spine. Before I could react, she vanished again, dissolving into the air like mist. I stood there, my mind reeling, trying to comprehend what I had just witnessed. It was as if time had stopped, leaving me alone in the fading light of the evening. I left the park that night with more questions than answers. The experience had shaken me to my core, but it also ignited a determination to uncover the truth. I began researching the history of the park and the manor house that once stood nearby. The deeper I dug, the more I realized how little I knew about the place I had taken for granted. The manor house, it turned out, had a dark history. It had been the site of numerous tragedies and mysterious deaths. The woman in the park, according to local legends, was the last in a long line of residents who had met untimely ends. Her name was Eliza, and she had died under suspicious circumstances. Her death officially ruled a suicide, though many believed otherwise. As I pieced together the fragments of Eliza's story, I felt a growing connection to her. She wasn't just a ghostly figure in the park. She was a person who had lived, loved, and suffered. Her story deserved to be told, and I felt a strange sense of duty to uncover the truth. I began spending more time in the park, hoping for another encounter with Eliza. Each evening, I would run the same path, my eyes scanning the shadows, my ears straining for any sound. It became an obsession, a quest for answers. One night, as I approached the spot where I had first seen Eliza, I felt a sudden chill. The air grew heavy, and the familiar silence of the park seemed to deepen. I slowed my pace, my heart racing with anticipation. There she was, standing beneath the oak tree, her form faintly illuminated by the moonlight. This time, there was a change in her demeanor. She seemed more solid, more present. "Eliza," I called softly, stepping towards her. Her eyes met mine, and for the first time I saw a flicker of recognition. She reached out a hand, and I felt an overwhelming urge to take it. As our fingers touched, a flood of images and emotions surged through me. Scenes of Eliza's life, her joys, her sorrows, her untimely death. I saw her standing by the window of the manor house, staring out at the park, a look of despair on her face. I felt her fear and her longing, her sense of being trapped in a life that was not her own. I understood her in a way that transcended words. And then, just as suddenly, it was over. Eliza was gone, and I was alone once more, standing beneath the oak tree. But I knew now what I had to do. I spent the next few days gathering information, speaking with local historians, and digging through archives. Piece by piece, I uncovered the truth about Eliza's death. She had not taken her own life. She had been murdered, her death covered up by those who stood to gain from her demise. Armed with this knowledge, I went to the authorities. Took some convincing, but eventually, they agreed to reopen the investigation. The evidence I had gathered was enough to bring to light the injustices that had been buried for over a century. The case became a sensation, drawing media attention and sparking debates about justice and accountability. Eliza's story was finally told, her name cleared, her memory honored. In the weeks that followed, I felt a sense of peace that had eluded me since that first encounter in the park. The hauntings ceased, and the park returned to its serene, welcoming state. I continued my runs, but now with a sense of purpose and closure. Eliza had found her peace, and in doing so, she had given me a gift, the understanding that even in the darkest of times, there is light to be found. Her story had changed me, showing me the power of persistence and the importance of seeking the truth, no matter how hidden it might be. The park, once a place of eerie silence and ghostly encounters, had become a symbol of hope and resilience. Every step I took on its paths was a reminder of the strength of the human spirit and the enduring power of justice. Meet Sarah. Like many of us, she used to dread bedtime. Hours spent tossing and turning, waking up groggy and irritable, and worst of all, her relentless snoring that not only disturbed her sleep, but her partner's as well. Desperate for a solution, Sarah tried everything. New mattresses, white noise machines, even sleeping pills. Nothing worked until she discovered our breathing for sleep routine. One particularly frustrating night, Sarah stumbled upon an article about the power of breathing to improve sleep. Skeptical but willing to try anything, she read about our breathing for sleep routine, a simple, scientifically backed method designed to clear sinuses, enhance breathing, and eliminate oxygen blockades. It promised to guide users through a simple breathing routine for the best sleep of their lives. Intrigued, she decided to give it a shot. As she began the routine, Sarah immediately felt her sinuses clear. She followed the step-by-step guide, learning how to breathe deeply and correctly. Within minutes, she noticed a significant difference. Her breathing was smoother, more relaxed. That night, she fell asleep faster than she had in years and, incredibly, stayed asleep all night. One of the most astonishing benefits was the end of her snoring. The routine included a simple breathing hack that stopped her snoring in minutes. Sarah learned that her habit of mouth breathing was activating her survival mode, preventing her from achieving truly restful sleep. By switching to nasal breathing, she deactivated this mode and allowed her body to fully relax. The next morning, Sarah woke up feeling refreshed and rejuvenated. She couldn't remember the last time she felt so well rested. Her partner noticed the difference too. No more middle-of-the-night disruptions from her snoring. The transformation was remarkable, and Sarah knew she had found something special. Sarah's story is not unique. Many others have discovered the life-changing benefits of our breathing for sleep routine. Imagine falling asleep quickly, sleeping soundly through the night, and waking up feeling fully rested. No more snoring, no more grogginess, just deep, restorative sleep. Are you ready to transform your sleep like Sarah did? Our breathing for sleep routine is easy to follow and starts working immediately. Clear your sinuses, enhance your breathing, and remove oxygen blockades with our guided routine. Say goodbye to snoring and hello to the best sleep of your life. Don't spend another night tossing and turning. Experience the power of proper breathing and reclaim your nights. Try our breathing for sleep routine tonight and wake up to a new, refreshed you. Because everyone deserves the gift of deep, restful sleep. Check out the link for this wonder in the description and the comments. Thank you for joining us on this harrowing journey. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more tales of terror. Until next time, stay safe and beware the shadows.